Hello and welcome back to RADTV UK, reporting for accountable democracy in the UK. This is the third section of today's edition, and we're going to be reporting on the Bilderberg protests. The Bilderberg group met in London from the 6th to the 9th of June. For the first time, it became a mainstream media event. Dissident people appeared on mainstream media in a way they never have done before, so the protesters have got some success at least from that. We're going to be hearing from Roy Hunter, who was actually there. He was on the barge with Alex Jones, with the famous Alex Jones. Roy, let's just hear what's your take on the protests?
Well, I think it's very good because the Bilderberg group has always been a conspiracy, hasn't it? And now it's no longer a conspiracy because the protests managed to get it onto the mainstream media, and therefore it's now a fact in the public consciousness. So
what they called a conspiracy, called it a conspiracy theory, and now they're having to admit that actually it exists. It's not a theory. It's actually well, what is it exactly?
Fact.
Yeah,
is what it
is. And who are these Bilderbergers?
Well, they've been meeting since 1955, and it's heads of royalty, banks, armies, all the people of influence, really. At this one, we had Henry Kissinger, who's the big baddie in chief, really. From our parliament, we had George Osborne, Ed Balls, and Ken Clarke, and Peter Mandelson, although he's no longer in the cabinet anymore. But certainly, these are our elected officials that are going and meeting in secret with people from all walks of life, really. We had Marcus Agius there, the ex-chairman of Barclays Bank, and he had to resign after the LIBOR scandal. We had Douglas J. Flint there, who was chairman of HSBC Holdings Limited, who were fined recently 1.9 billion for laundering South American drug money. So
they're not choosy. It's power seems to be the main criterion. Yeah. I suppose they say, well, this is just a private club. You know, what right have we got to snoop? Which, of course, would be a bit ironic given what we know about them snooping on us. Yeah. But what's the answer to that?
Well, the answer to that is that they are making policy. They've been trying to say that it's just all these important people getting together just to have a discussion and things. But you really have got everybody of importance from around the world really attending these meetings. And if we think that there's nothing going to be decided there, then I think that's just naive, really. So
why would they meet if it's not to try to influence policy?
Absolutely. Why would they? Can I name a few more names that were there? We've got Gerard Coca-Coles from BAE Systems, Jose Manuel Barroso, who was the president of the European Commission, Christine Lagarde, managing director of the IMF, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, David Petraeus, the former head of the CIA.
Oh my goodness! Who
resigned recently, ostensibly through an extramarital affair, but seems to be more tied up with the Benghazi affair, really. There's a lot of influential people there. Tony Blair lied to Parliament about attending. He said he'd never attended to Parliament.
Did he really?
Yeah. And We Are Change recently asked him the question, and he admitted he'd gone.
How interesting. Yeah. So now I heard that the police were actually very cooperative with the protests.
The protest was wonderful, actually. I wasn't particularly involved in organising it, but we had about a month's notice, really, because this is supposed to be a secret meeting, of course.
Well, we were saying on RADTV even a month ago that we weren't quite sure. Nobody was quite sure.
So basically, we had a month's notice of them coming, and we applied for an event license so we could have a festival next door. And of course, you've got to give 30 days notice for an event. So they refused the license on those grounds, really. But then I think it became obvious to the police that there was going to be some kind of event. We'd already started advertising this before they refused the event license. So it was obvious to the police there was going to be some kind of event. So they actually cooperated and accommodated us within the grounds of the hotel, actually, which was
just to go off on a tangent there, I was actually in a meeting with a police commander. She found an hour and a half to talk to me and a survivor of the World Trade Center, and Tony Rook, who's refusing to pay his TV licence in protest against the BBC's reporting of the 9/11 attacks. This police commander found an hour and a half to listen to our request that they open a file on the 9/11 attacks as being a case of state organised terrorism, with the suspects being senior people in the CIA. So compared to the media, the police are very open, in my experience, to looking at criminality wherever it lies. The problem really seems to be the media.
Yeah, it is the media, but this was a watershed really for getting the Bilderberg group out onto the media.
Into the media.
And I was personally driving a narrowboat down the canal in front of the hotel, and we were doing trips, 2.5 hour round trips backwards and forwards with various journalists on board, including the great Alex Jones. We were followed by police because it was all under, although they couldn't stop us going down the canal, we weren't allowed to touch the sides, we weren't allowed to get off the barge, and the whole area was clamped down under anti-terror laws. But we had 3 police in the boat following us all the time, and we had 2 police following us along the towpath all the time.
Roy, you're too modest. You were at the cutting edge of the protests. You were there nearer to them than anybody. Fantastic. Well, there we are.
But we had the opportunity, 2.5 hour round trip, to chat to these policemen all day long, the ones in the boat behind us and the 2 on the towpath.
Right.
And so we were just explaining our political point of view, and they were very, very receptive. Actually.
Well, the police, of course, like most people, are not in the 1%. Well, here's what the Telegraph political correspondent described as a clandestine meeting of royalty, prime ministers and business chiefs. So they're quite sceptical of it, and I don't know how that got through the filters to get into the Daily Telegraph. Bilderberg organisers include Tory Cabinet Minister Ken Clarke, roll call of luminaries, invitation-only meetings attended by 140 members of the international elite. You or I could have written this, but you know, this is the mainstream media, so of course they say that there's conspiracy theories.
But I think what we've got happening now is we've got Charlie Skelton, who's writing for the Guardian on the Bilderberg meetings, and he's written for the Guardian about the Bilderberg, the last 2 or 3 Bilderberg meetings. So in a way, he's kind of dragged it into the public consciousness.
There was
in
a the word from inside the Guardian is that there was a huge fight on the Guardian about this.
Oh, really?
And the Guardian's diplomatic correspondent, who sort of parrots the CIA line on anything, that's his job as diplomatic correspondent, it seems. He was demanding that Charlie Skelton be censored and not appear in the Guardian. That's the rumour that I heard. Yeah. So there we are. Well, thanks very much, Roy.
Thank you.
Now to finish, I've got a couple of good news stories. This first story, I've checked it out. It does. It adds up. You might have heard it. I don't know how widely. It's not dead new. It's a couple of months old. Elephant kills poacher who tried to shoot it. The bloody remains of a poacher killed by an elephant were recently found in a Zimbabwean national park, and this was originally reported in the Zimbabwean media and taken up by 1 or 2 other media, but it didn't get that much of a widespread report, I don't think. Man was recently trampled to death by an elephant in Zimbabwe as he attempted to kill it. Police found Solomon Manjuro's bloody remains and, listen to this, arrested his colleague, and his colleague was the name of No Luck Tafuraka. So No Luck Tafuraka actually survived, so he did have a bit of luck. Solomon was killed by the elephant, and that's one up for the animal kingdom against the poachers. The police were nowhere to be seen at the time, but they did arrest No Luck later. And here's our second bit of good news. Uruguayan president donates salary to charity. Figures released last year show that Jose Mujica, Uruguay's 40th president, donated 90% of his salary to charity. He owns a small farm on the outskirts of Montevideo. He doesn't have a checkbook, he just deals in cash. And on his inauguration night in 2009, he drove home in a 1987 Volkswagen Beetle. Mujica was imprisoned by the US-backed dictatorship in Uruguay for 14 years and spent 18 months at the bottom of a well in solitary confinement. But he survived, and he's Uruguayan president, and he drives a 1987 Volkswagen Beetle. and he doesn't have a checkbook. So there's hope for all of our political systems, perhaps, in that story. Thanks very much. You've been watching RADTV UK, reporting for accountable democracy, based in the UK. And thank you for watching. Tell your friends about it, and we'll be back on air in another week or two. Thank you very much.